Breaking out of prison. One mind at a time.
We are the TwoRealNews.com
Broadcasting team on the Shake and Wake radio network.
and we are going live in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, welcome to Two Real News Radio. I'm Seth Davis.
And I'm Jason Boss, and this is the Two Real News headline news for April 18th, 2015.
And here's a look at today's headlines. In U.S. politics news, details of the extent of bribery and corruption by Senator Bob Menendez emerge. Also, Obama to host Saudi leader as well as the leaders of Gulf states this May. In world news, former Saddam deputy killed near Tikrit, Iraqi officials say, and also Israel may send arms to Ukraine if Russia delivers S-300s to Iran. In business news, U.S. regulators may scuttle Time Warner Cable-Comcast merger, and also airlines slash routes to Russia and latest sign of Russia's growing isolation. In tech news, Japanese maglev train breaks its own world record speed. In health news, activist power, Lowe's to stop selling bee-killing neonics. And finally, in local news, semi-truck carrying millions of bees overturns on I-5, Washington State Patrol warns drivers. And now, starting in American politics, our first story tonight. Details of the extent of bribery and corruption by Senator Bob Menendez emerge. This is out of mintpressnews.com. Senator Bob Menendez's legal defense fund raised nearly $1.3 million up until the day before he was indicted on bribery and corruption charges, including $10,000 from a retired New Jersey developer who served 2 years in prison for making illegal kickbacks. Menendez's fund also received $10,000 from the wife of the developer, Joseph Berry, and another $130,000 from executives of the development firm founded by Berry's two sons and their families, according to a review by the Associated Press of financial disclosure forms filed with the IRS and the Senate. The fund had paid for about $850,000 in legal expenses through March 31st, the day before Menendez was indicted on 14 counts accusing him of using his influence to help a Florida eye doctor in exchange for lavish vacations and campaign donations. He has pleaded not guilty and has vowed to fight the charges. Menendez's chief of staff, Fred Turner, called the Berrys, quote, longtime friends and supporters of the senators, and said that Menendez had no issue accepting money from them. Quote, he is deeply appreciative of their support and friendship, Turner said Thursday. The legal fund has also paid $20,000 to Samantha Maltzman, a fundraiser who has resigned last year from a political advocacy group backed by President Barack Obama after inviting a New Jersey donor to a dinner with the president and listing prices to attend. Turner said the longtime Democratic fundraiser is, quote, one of the most well-respected and effective fundraising professionals in the country, end quote, and that Menendez is, quote, always grateful to have her working in his behalf. The Legal Defense Fund is just one part of Menendez's response to the years-long investigation, which also includes a coordinated public relations campaign to support him through what is likely to be a long and expensive legal fight. Details on money raised and spent since April 1st, the day a slick IStandWithBob.com website launched, aren't yet publicly available. Berry was sentenced to 25 months in prison in 2004 and given nearly $115,000 in payoffs to longtime Hudson County executive Robert Janiswiski after getting his help to obtain government funding. The money went toward building a shipyard project, which turned a former Bethlehem steel plant into high-end housing and retail that helped reshape the waterfront in Hoboken. The project is now owned by Iron State Development Corporation, which Berry's sons started after he retired from the country. Iron State has developed high-end mixed-use projects across New Jersey and New York. The sons, Michael and David, contributed the annual maximum of $10,000 in both 2014 and 2015, as did both of their wives. David Berry's college-age daughter and Joseph Berry's daughter contributed the maximum this year. Two other Iron State employees donated a combined $30,000. The money contributed by the Berrys and Iron State employees represents about a quarter of the money raised between January 1st and March 31st. David and Michael Berry have also donated $5,200 each to Menendez's Senate campaign last year. Messages left with Berry family members weren't returned on Thursday. Craig Holman, a government affairs lobbyist for nonprofit watchdog group Public Citizen, described the Berry contribution as, quote, coordinated, orchestrated bundling campaign. Quote, this is very unbecoming of the senator to rely on these types of sources for his funds and for raising funds from others, Holman said. It really raises some questions as to his ability to discern the potentially corrupting influence of money. Among the other contributions to the legal defense fund are more than $177,000 given by members of the pro-Israel lobby, AIPAC, including $157,500 donated on one day alone, April 14, 2014. Menendez has been a strong supporter of Israel and a leading proponent of sanctions on Iran. The fund has also received $20,000 from Jorge Maz, the chairman of the board of the Cuban American National Foundation, a leading anti-Cuban government group based in Miami. Menendez has been a chief opponent of the Obama administration's policy on Cuba. Menendez's Senate Political Actions Committee has also donated the maximum $20,000 over 2 years. Waltzman is a Menendez campaign staffer and began getting paid by the fund in August, 5 months after she resigned from Organizing for America, after emails surfaced between her and a major donor that conflicted with the group's long-standing assertion that its supporters don't have to pay a set price to attend its summits with the president. The emails also raised questions about whether Dr. Munir Kazmir and other donors he recruited stood to benefit from securing FaceTime with Obama or his aides. The group said it had returned the check for $100,000 after Joseph Piacentile mailed to the group after Kazmir encouraged him to donate. When it was discovered that Piacentile was convicted of Medicare fraud in the 1990s and was reportedly seeking a presidential pardon, the group returned the check. Maltzman didn't return an email and phone message seeking comment. Menendez's co-defendant, Florida eye doctor Solomon Melgen, was charged this week for trying to bilk Medicare out of as much as $190 million. He pleaded not guilty Thursday.
In more political news, the Barack Obama presidency just set a new record for being the opposite of transparent. Call it another, you can keep your doctor and health insurance if you want moment. As reported by the Associated Press, which has its own reasons for going after this White House's privacy and openness policies, the administration has set a record again for both censoring information from the general public. The administration has set a record again for both censoring information from the general public by hiding the government files or by simply denying reporters and organizations legitimate access to them under the Freedom of Information Act. According to a recent analysis by the AP, the Obama regime took longer to hand over public information when it provided any at all. According to a recent analysis by the AP, the Obama regime took longer to hand over public information, if it handed anything at all. They said, more regularly, that it could not find the documents and refused a record number of times to produce files that could be particularly newsworthy. It also acknowledged in nearly 1 in 3 cases that its initial decisions to withhold or censor records were improper under the law, but only when it was challenged.
Also, in American political news, Obama to host Saudi leaders as well as the leaders of Gulf states this May. This is out of thehill.com. President Obama will host leaders from Gulf states next month as he seeks to quell concerns over a nuclear deal with Iran. The 2-day summit will take place May 13th and May 14th, with one day at the White House and the next at Camp David. Leaders from 6 Arab states that neighbor Iran, Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates will attend. Many of the states have expressed concern over the emerging nuclear agreement, which would curb but not eliminate Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. Saudi Arabia, Iran's chief rival in the region, has publicly backed the deal, but privately, observers believe the Saudis may pursue their own nuclear program if Iran is left with enough nuclear capacity to race toward building a bomb. Saudi Arabia and Iran have also found themselves on opposite sides of the conflict in Yemen. The United States is backing the Saudis' fight against Shiite rebels that have received support from Iran. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest called the summit an opportunity for leaders to, quote, discuss better ways to enhance the partnership and deepen security cooperation. And now in international news, former Saddam deputy killed near Tikrit, Iraqi officials say, by Qasim Abdul-Zahra and Vivian Salama, Associated Press. Iraqi officials say they believe the government forces on Friday killed Saddam Hussein's former deputy, Izzat Ibrahim al-Duri, who remained a wanted fugitive since the 2003 U.S.-led invasion of Iraq, and who later allied himself with Islamic State militants. Al-Duri was known as the, quote, king of clubs, in the deck of playing cards issued to help U.S. troops identify key members of Saddam's regime. He was killed by Iraqi soldiers and allied Shiite militiamen in a government operation to the east of Saddam's hometown of Tikrit. The Salahuddin province governor, Raed al-Jabouri, told the Associated Press. The operation was taking place in the Talal Hamrim Mountains, al-Jabouri said. The series of graphic photos issued by the government later Friday purported to be al-Duri's corpse. A bright red beard and a mustache, the mustache was al-Duri's most distinguishing feature among Saddam's coterie, were visible in the photos. Senior Iraqi regional commander General Haider al-Basri told Iraqi state television that al-Duri and 9 bodyguards were killed by gunshots while riding in a convoy. Al-Basri did not elaborate, however, why the Iraqi forces opened fire at the convoy. DNA tests were underway to confirm the identity of the body, Iraqi intelligence officials told the Associated Press, speaking on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to talk to the media. This is not the first time Iraqi officials have claimed to have killed or captured al-Duri, however. In 2003, the government said it arrested al-Duri, circulating a photo of a bearded man who resembled the former Ba'athist. It later said it was a case of mistaken identity. Al-Duri was officially the number 2 man in Iraq's ruling hierarchy when the Ba'athist regime collapsed as U.S. troops occupied Baghdad. He disappeared after the U.S. invasion and was widely rumored to be in hiding in northern cities in Iraq that bred Sunni insurgent groups. When Tikrit was overrun by the Sunni militant group last June, witnesses said fighters raised posters of Saddam and al-Duri. Fighters loyal to his Naqshbandi army, as well as former members of Saddam's Ba'ath Party, were the main militant force in Tikrit at the time of its capture, local residents told the AP at the time. Iraqi security forces recaptured al-Duri's hometown of Dar in March as part of its large-scale offensive to retake Tikrit. Government forces seized control of Tikrit on April 1st.
The Iraqi Prime Minister says ISIS might become unstoppable. The United States authorities are trying to downplay the hazard of ISIS, with General Martin Dempsey unbelievably declaring the city of Ramadi, the capital of Iraq's largest province, and on a highway directly to the capital of Baghdad, says that there's no genuine value and that an ISIS takeover would not be a significant blow. However, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider Abadi sees it in a different way. Abadi warns ISIS is hiring youths, not just to hunt, not just Iraq, but throughout the world, and is both a transnational nation and one that is capable of establishing major presence. In the UK, the headline reads, "It's not the evidence, but who you are that matters," as the Crown Prosecution Service decided not to bring charges against the wealthy peer and established insider Lord Greville Janner in connection with the allegations of child abuse. The public and the police were outraged that the now 86-year-old Janner had been investigated by the police 4 times in the last 25 years. More than a dozen people came forward to say that they had been abused by the former MP at children's homes. But once again, he's been let off the hook, with no charges being filed. What makes a decision particularly hard to take is that the CPS openly admits that Janner should have been prosecuted following the investigations in the past, and that the charges against him were extremely serious. The CPS says that Janner was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in 2009, but his condition does seem to have significantly deteriorated since the police reopened their investigation into the historic crimes against him in the late 2013. So the question remains, if we accept that Janner's onset of dementia makes him incapable of standing trial, then the question of why he didn't stand trial earlier remains. Last year, a former detective sergeant told a national newspaper how, despite finding credible evidence, he received orders from above to limit his inquiries into Janner back to 1989.
Also in international news, Israel may send arms to Ukraine if Russia delivers S-300 to Iran. This is out of RussiaInsider.com. According to NRG, the Israeli government has not made any decision yet on sending weapons to Ukraine. Earlier on Tuesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told Russian President Putin in a phone conversation that the planned delivery of the S-300 missile systems to Iran will undermine stability in the Middle East and increase Tehran's belligerence. The deal between Russia and Iran said on the delivery of 5 S-300 PMU-1 systems worth $800 million was agreed on 8 years ago, but was suspended by then-President Dmitry Medvedev after the UN Security Council slapped Iran with an arms embargo over concerns that Tehran was making weapons-grade uranium to use in nuclear warheads. Russian top diplomat Sergei Lavrov said earlier that the ban had become obsolete, citing progress in the nuclear talks between Iran and the 6 world powers that will eventually see UN sanctions phased out.
The Iraqi Prime Minister says ISIS might become unstoppable. The United States authorities are trying to downplay the hazard of ISIS, with General Martin Dempsey unbelievably declaring the city of Ramadi, the capital of Iraq's largest province, and on a highway directly to the capital of Baghdad, says that there's no genuine value and that an ISIS takeover would not be a significant blow. However, Iraqi Prime Minister Haider Abadi sees it in a different way. Abadi warns ISIS is hiring youths, not just to hunt, not just in Iraq, but throughout the world, and is both a transnational nation and one that is capable of establishing major presence.
And now in business news, U.S. regulators may scuttle Time Warner Cable Comcast merger. This is out of extremetech.com. Ever since Time Warner and Comcast announced their intent to seek a merger, public opinion has been fiercely against the idea. The discussions over whether the merger should be allowed have sparked increased discussion around the effective oligopoly and profound anti-competitive nature of American broadband. Now, news is broken that the U.S. government's regulators are considering killing the deal. There's been little serious argument that the merger should be allowed to proceed. While the two companies protested that allowing them to merge wouldn't harm competition, the maps they produced to demonstrate this wound up illustrating just how anti-competitive the current system already is. The entire U.S. market is carved up similarly. Cable companies completely avoid competing with each other. Thus, your choice of internet service provider, assuming you have one, is between cable and DSL service. Bloomberg reports that the Department of Justice has been contacting multiple outside parties to build a case against approving the deal. Officials at the FCC apparently aren't negotiating with Comcast on conditions that would make the merger palatable to government regulators, and that's seen as further evidence that the deal could be scuttled in the near future. Comcast, of course, has claimed otherwise. Quote, "There is no basis for a lawsuit or to block the transaction," said Sina Fitzmaurice, a Comcast spokeswoman. The merger, quote, "will result in significant consumer benefits, faster broadband speed, access to superior video experience, and more competition in business services resulting in billions of dollars of cost savings," end quote. The problem with Comcast's argument is that they contradict the company's earlier statements. In February, Comcast Executive Vice President David Cohen refused to say that prices would go down or that service would improve for individual consumers, going so far as to say, quote, "Frankly, most of the factors that go into customer bills are factors beyond our control," end quote. Comcast hasn't presented a single credible argument for why it would be allowed to merge with TWC, and the fact that both companies are generally reviled for horrific customer service practices is evidence enough that regardless of its rhetoric, Comcast has no interest in the experience of its end users. Awarding executives on both sides with a pile of money they stand to earn if a merger is approved is in no way to deal with either firm. This is also out of business news. Airlines slash routes to Moscow in latest sign of Russia's growing isolation. Now, this particular article is out of Bloomberg.com. In 2012, British discount airline EasyJet beat Virgin Atlantic Airways in a fierce competition for the rights to fly from London's Gatwick to Moscow's Domodedovo airport, a route that had become available when its former operator was swallowed up in a merger. British aviation regulators gave the nod to EasyJet, which hailed the decision as a milestone in its international development. Now, EasyJet has scaled back its London-Moscow service from 2 daily flights to only 1 in each direction. The move, which took effect in late January, quote, "was in response to the reduction in demand to and from Russia in recent months," an airline spokeswoman says. The British discounter is one of many airlines curtailing flights to Russia and shelving planned expansion there, as a number of Russians vacationing abroad has plummeted and fewer foreign business people and tourists are visiting the country. For the airlines, it's a simple matter of supply and demand, but the reduced traffic at Russia's international airports mirrors the country's growing political isolation and weakened economic clout, as Western sanctions and lower oil prices push Russia into recession. Once shabby airports such as Moscow's Domodedovo, Sheremetyevo, and Yanukovo have been emblems of Russia's booming economy during most of President Vladimir Putin's tenure. All 3 of these airports underwent extensive renovations to accommodate traffic that has more than quadrupled since 2000 to a combined 77 million passengers in 2014, exceeding international hubs such as London Heathrow and Dubai. These gleaming new terminals in Moscow are getting a lot quieter. On Wednesday, Delta Airlines announced it will suspend service to Moscow during the final 3 months of this year, meaning that no U.S. passenger carrier will fly to the Russian capital during that period. Delta has already trimmed its spring and summer service to Russia. It now flies only 5 times a week between New York and Moscow, down from 7 in 2014. Hong Kong-based Cathay Pacific says it will end service to Moscow in June. And Air India, which has resumed flying from Delhi to Moscow in 2015 after a 15-year hiatus, cut back service to 2 flights a week in February after filling an average of only 47% of seats on the route. Other scaling back includes Middle Eastern carriers Etihad and Qatar, as well as Czech Airlines, which is scrapping plans to serve the regional cities of Kazan, Kaliningrad, Perm, and Ufa this summer. Quote, "We have been relocating the capacity freed in the Russian market, which has been experiencing a significant drop in demand," end quote, the company said in a statement. Russian-based airlines are taking even more drastic steps as the ruble's sharp decline has led to a more than 50% drop in the number of Russians traveling abroad, according to the government. The country's air transportation agency reported on March 24th that Russian carriers were abandoning 71 international routes linking Russian cities to such destinations as Barcelona, Dubai, Tel Aviv, and Vienna. Carriers Transaero and UT Air accounted for most of the reductions. And now in tech news. Japanese maglev train breaks its own world speed record. And this is out of Engadget.com. The Central Japan Railway Company reports that its magnetic levitation bullet train topped 366 miles per hour on Thursday during a test run along the length of its test track in the Yamanashi Prefecture. This was enough to break its own 12-year-old 361-mile-an-hour world record set back in 2003. The train reportedly carried 29 engineers during its run. Unfortunately, the record is only expected to last until next Tuesday, when the JR Central hopes to spur the magnetically propelled commuter train past 372 miles an hour. Also unfortunate is the fact that normal passengers will likely never be able to experience these exhilarating speeds unless something goes horribly wrong. The rail company plans to limit the train speed to a pokey 313 miles an hour for regular service when they come online in 2027. But even at these speeds, commuters could make it from Tokyo to Nagoya in about 40 minutes, less than half the time today's fastest bullet trains require. The company even has aspirations to export this technology to America, specifically as a high-speed rail line running between New York and Washington, D.C.
Get ready for your mobile phones to be shaken up. On Tuesday, Google is going to release a brand new search index that's going to focus primarily on mobile-friendly sites. For the sites that aren't mobile-friendly, most likely you will be taken out of the index and lose a lot of your traffic. For those that do have the mobile-friendly site, you can expect that Google is going to be very friendly towards you as they're moving everything towards mobility. Apple has pre-ordered 2.3 million Apple Watches.
And now in health news, activist power. Lowe's to stop selling bee-killing neonics. This is out at naturalsociety.com. Lowe's and Home Depot were recently targeted in a campaign by activists urging the stores to stop selling neonicotinoid pesticides, a likely culprit in the decimation of bee and butterfly colonies. It looks as if at least one of the mega retailers listened. Lowe's, one of the U.S.'s largest home improvement and gardening supply stores, has plans to stop selling products containing neonics, largely in response to activist pressure. It is likely that the store is following the lead of other retailers who stopped selling neonics earlier this year. Ironically, many plants being sold as, quote, bee-friendly, i.e., some plants are attractive to pollinators and also repel pests that can devour a garden, at these retailers were pre-treated with neonics at levels even higher than those used at large farms. There are no labels on these plants indicating that they are pre-treated with neonics. This particular group of insecticides is so dangerous that the entire state of Minnesota considered a complete ban, and the European Union suspended their use in all 27 countries years ago. In the United States, the city of Eugene, Oregon, became the first city in the United States to have banned neonicotinoid pesticides. Neonics are particularly worrisome as they are absorbed by not just the plant, but are also transferred into its vascular system, making the plant itself, not just its insecticide, toxic to the insects, including bees and butterflies. Quote, "The impact of this class of insecticides on pollinating insects such as honeybees and native bees is a cause for concern. Because they are absorbed into the plant, neonicotinoids can be present in pollen and nectar, making these floral resources toxic to pollinators that feed on them. The long-lasting presence of neonicotinoids in plants makes it possible for these chemicals to harm pollinators even when the initial application is made outside of the bloom period. In addition, neonicotinoids persist in the soil and in plants for very long periods of time." End quote. Bees have been dying by the millions in what is now called colony collapse disorder, with much evidence pointing to neonicotinoids and other pesticides and herbicides as the most likely culprits. Hopefully, Lowe's will be the first of many more farms and gardening supply companies that will remove neonics from their shelves. in order to save the bees. Without them, our food supply is in jeopardy. Lowe's plans to phase out neonics by 2019. Let's hope it won't be too late by then.
Coca-Cola, trying to boost its profits, has gone and teamed up with fitness experts who are in turn suggesting that the Coke products can be used as treats. As America is starting to get a handle on its epidemic of poison food, junk food-related obesities, diabetes, cancer, and cardiac problems, Coca-Cola has now partnered with the nutrition and fitness experts who are taking the spin in a different direction in labeling Coke products as treats. In February, several of the so-called experts wrote online posts for American Heart Month, with each including a mini can of Coke or soda as a snack idea. The pieces, which appeared on nutrition blogs and other sites, including those of major newspapers, offer a window into the many ways food companies work behind the scenes to cast their products in a positive light, often with the help of third parties who are seen as trusted authorities, but are very well paid off. A spokesman for the soda maker, Ben Shalder, compared those posts to product placement arrangements between companies and television programs. "We have a network of dietitians we work with," Shalder said, but he declined to say how much the company pays these experts. Every big brand works with bloggers or has paid talent. There are other companies too that use similar strategies. Kellogg, General Mills, each of whom produce GMO-filled sugary breakfast cereals, funding studies that tout supposedly nutritional facts, experts, and by offering health experts positive light towards the products they're pushing, about Obama administration plotting adult vaccinations and making them mandatory. In collaboration with big business and special interests, the Obama administration's Department of Health and Human Solutions, or HHS as they're called, is outlining a brand new program to track Americans' vaccination records, wage a massive propaganda campaign to motivate more shots and foist more controversial vaccinations. Department of Health and Human Solutions, HHS, is outlining a brand new program to track Americans' vaccination records and wage a massive propaganda campaign to motivate more shots and get more in grown-ups against their will. The federal bureaucrats and crony capitalists set to benefit from this proposition assert the goal is to enhance public health. Mainstream media outlets, federal bureaucrats, and crony capitalists are set to benefit from the proposition as they assert that the goal is to enhance public health as the media spins the same song. More news on the home front. Documents have emerged showing that the latest Ferguson riots had the National Guard considering Americans as enemy forces and adversaries. Steve Watson from InfoWars brought us the story that detailed documents obtained by CNN revealed that the Missouri National Guard referred to Americans in Ferguson as enemy forces and adversaries in briefings as they prepared to quell protests. The internal briefing documents, secured under a Freedom of Information Act, revealed that the National Guard called into Ferguson under already tense circumstances, used heavily militarized language to describe protesters, many of whom were lawfully abiding citizens executing their First Amendment rights. The documents highlight that the Guard was worried about adversaries using phone apps and police scanners to find out about and compromise operational security. The National Guard higher-ups also expressed concern that protesters may use militant tactics. Counterintelligence operations are directed at supporting an information campaign. Commanders were briefed to use intelligence capabilities to deny adversaries the ability to identify Missouri National Guard vulnerabilities upon which threat forces may exploit, causing embarrassment or harm. General protesters were also described as hate groups and lumped in with known members of the KKK, the RGB Black Rebels, and the New Black Panther Party. Rioters likely had constructed homemade protection like goggles, gas masks, and plywood shields. Further, select individuals may also have bulletproof vests and may carry firearms. The documents are seen as highly disturbing by critics who have noted that they read like a strategy for going to war against the American people. 5 adults were found dead inside a Phoenix home after a shooting in a suspected dispute over the family's business. Police said Thursday the 3 men were brothers, and the dead woman apparently were the men's mother and the spouse of one of the brothers. 2 other women and 2 children managed to escape the home unharmed. One of those women told officers that the shooting stemmed from a family dispute gone wrong. Sergeant Trent Crump said that one of the women told the officers that the shooting stemmed from a family dispute gone wrong. Our dispatcher could hear shots fired in the background while that call was coming in, Crump said. A caller had been able to escape the home at that point, get out, and start to give us information. Crump said the family had origins in Morocco. During an hours-long standoff before the bodies were found, police used a megaphone to try to communicate with the occupants of the home, addressing the family in Arabic. The names and ages of the 3 men and women weren't immediately released. TV footage showed several SWAT officers breaking the glass of the back patio door to enter the home. The SWAT team used a robot to search the house before sending in a dog and officer. A police perimeter remained in place well into the night as investigators padded around the scene and detectives went door to door collecting evidence.
And now in local news, semi-truck carrying millions of bees overturns on I-5. Washington State Patrol warns drivers. This out of Q13Fox.com. A semi-truck loaded with more than 40 million bees overturned on Interstate 5 in Linwood, sending more and more angry insects into the air as the temperature warms up and traffic intensifies. The crash occurred sometime before 4 a.m. Friday morning near milepost 183 at the intersection of I-5 and I-405. The semi-truck blew a front tire and overturned, Washington State Patrol troopers said, sending more than 448 honey bee hives onto their sides onto the road. The driver of the semi-truck was not injured in the crash. The bees remained calm at first in the cool morning air, but have grown increasingly agitated, Washington State Patrol troopers said. Firefighters were on the scene spraying the bees with water, and a company from Burlington suited up in an attempt to calm and remove the bees. At least two Q13 Fox News photographers, along with reporter Kelly O'Connell, were stung as the bees woke up in the sun. Once temperatures got above 55 degrees, the bees stopped clustering together and branched out, Seth Smith of Valley Buzz Beekeeping said. Officials warned removal of the bees could take hours. They also encouraged drivers to roll up their windows and close vents while driving by, as a number of people have been reported to be stung. A local beekeeper called the crash a, quote, big blow to local beekeepers. However, as long as the queens are alive, quite a few can be saved. And finally, for our quote of the day, quote, power in defense of freedom is greater than power in behalf of tyranny and oppression, because power, real power, comes from our conviction, which produces action, uncompromising action. That's Malcolm X. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this broadcast of 2 Real News Radio. Thank you for joining us. Have a pleasant day, and God bless you.